We're diving deep today in some of the big issues, exploiting the age of AI. We're going to look again at offensive security. We're going to dive into the quantum age and how we defend data in the quantum age. But to kick it off, as we always do on day two, one of the most important publications in the industry every year is the State of Security Report. Ivano's going to come forward with Tim Wadande from Savient to discuss the report, and they're going to be put through the ringer by the one and the only, she's the most brutal interrogator in the business, Velvet Bell, VB Templeman from iTnews. All yours, VB. Tell us about the state of security. Give them a big round of applause.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. You all look so lovely. I can't believe you're all here after such a big night last night. Can we all just give a big round of applause to AusCert for putting on such a great show every year? Well done, guys. Thank you so much. We love coming back to AusCert every year, love seeing some familiar faces and giving you all lots of hugs. So, as you said, I'm VB, Publishing Director at iTnews, and iTnews tells the stories that matters to you guys, hopefully, enterprise and government, security and tech leaders. And it's so great to hear from some of you that every morning you're reading our newsletters and you're checking in with the site. So please continue to do that, and thank you so much for reading. So as you know, iTnews also puts forward some research throughout the year, and this year is our 5th State of Security report. So we're diving into a whole bunch of different subsectors in the security ecosystem, things like XDR, endpoint, cloud security, etc. And these two gentlemen have been absolutely central to those conversations. Obviously, Ivano from AusCert and Tim from Savient, thank you so much for being here. So Tim, Savient sponsored the Identity and Access Management chapter of the State of Security report. And one of the big challenges that we're seeing in this space is actually securing non-human identities at scale. What are the biggest challenges you see here?
No, thanks for asking that one, and hopefully you can all hear me. Just quickly, before I jump in, first time I've been back to the Gold Coast in 20 years, so it's quite nice. Been living in the UK for the last 14 years, so looking forward to escaping to the beach a bit later. But yeah, going back to your question, I'm going to spend most of my time sort of talking to sort of IT security leaders around things such as non-human. And one of the big challenges is looking between legacy, having to manage a really large estate when it comes to proprietary applications, databases, and so on. And then on the other side, dealing with the large sprawl and the very fast sort of hyperscale of AI agents and being able to manage the pace of that within the business as well. And it's quite difficult because the velocity that moves at is incredibly fast when you compare it to the other stuff. So it makes balancing priorities for IT and security teams, on limited budget with a certain amount of people, quite a very difficult task today.
And what about the risk that NHIs pose? Do you think it's the same or higher or less risk than human identities?
Yeah, so, on that one, it's slightly different. So my background, for those who don't know, I come from the advisory background. I was with sort of EY and PwC in London for about 14, 15 years before coming back to Australia. When we sort of went into organizations wearing our old sort of audit hats, we'd look at non-human accounts. Typically, we'd see sort of accounts without levels of ownership, passwords that hadn't been rotated in sometimes months or in a few years. And that sort of came back to the stability of the system that they sat in. It was a bit too risky to go and rotate these sorts of passwords. So these levels of sort of core controls that maybe we do for some of the core workforce accounts, we don't really see them when it comes to non-human accounts. And then they pose a greater risk because then you also see variants of them, such as AI agent credentials, which are spinning up and moving very quickly through organizations and able to make decisions which we couldn't do before with non-human basic accounts. And it just creates a larger risk profile and more areas for vulnerability for organizations.
So it's a lot to manage for the security leaders in the room. And what do you think are some of the practical steps that they can take in, say, the next 12 to 18 months to secure their businesses here?
So if you sort of look at time frame ahead, 1 to 2 years, and a lot of the advice that I used to give back to sort of security and IT leaders was in that space. I guess one is, just focusing on the basics. So if you think about account security, do you have good visibility of stuff? Are you discovering things? Secondly, are you putting a level of life cycle management around these? So when they're registered, when they're provisioned out to people or entities, do they have the minimum access of what they need to do for that period of time? And then also that sort of deregistration. Are you taking that access away when it's not needed? And all of that really reduces the attack surface. The second point, by getting things under a single sort of pane of view, is we're able to then apply a lot more really useful intelligence these days when you look at the way that we use AI agents. And we can start to use it to drive efficiencies in some of our IT security ops workflows. We can replace some of them, and we can look at a lot of these signals that was really difficult to look at when we just have human eyes and very limited budgets.
Fantastic. So that's a little insight into the identity and access management chapter of the State of Security report. I want to jump next into cyber resilience, which was a new chapter this year, and the University of Queensland was featured in the chapter. Ivano, in this chapter we see a shift from prevention-led security to resilience and recovery. From your perspective, what's actually changing inside organisations today when it comes to resilience, and what still hasn't caught up?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we're actually seeing is something that I always refer back to the safety and critical systems industry, something that I've seen for a number of years now. So we got this progressive focus from just prevention and mitigation and just keep them out into, okay, well, if something does happen, how are we going to bounce back, which is exactly the definition of resilience. So companies have started investing a lot in things such as response, recovery. So the focus on backups has probably been at the highest point in this area. And at the same time, also figuring out how to get your house in order and trying to have good data governance practices, data minimization, to just obviously mitigate the consequences if things have to go wrong. At the same time, I would probably also say those very same elements are what a lot of companies are struggling with, right? If you think of especially small and medium businesses, even if we believe that those are foundational elements of what they should be doing, I mean, at the same time, they're there to try and run a business. A CEO really has to worry about volumes and revenue and all of that. So it's very difficult for them to have crack that ice at the beginning and start investing in those areas. That doesn't mean that they're not super fundamental moving forward, of course.
Yeah, and cyber resilience can be a bit of an intangible topic. So what are some of the sort of tangible metrics that security leaders should be held accountable to, or even boards?
Yeah, if you think of, well, I would start probably from the last point. If you think of boards, obviously we know that regulators are holding them more and more accountable. Recently we had the Australian Clinical Labs case where obviously first fined because of violations that were picked up, and obviously boards were held accountable, and the reason for that fine was suboptimal cybersecurity practices, right? So boards, obviously, it's probably unlikely they're going to be held accountable against the specific KPIs when it comes to risks. All their regulator is really focused on is, can you show evidence and assurance that you have taken necessary steps to obviously be able to mitigate cybersecurity consequences in case of a breach, responding, recovering, and all of that. And I think if you go one step down, at the CISO level or the leader level, that's where probably you can start having those metrics conversations, and the CISO has to be in a position where they can actually translate those numbers into that assurance that actually boards are focusing on. So it's really a team's game in that perspective of focus on the full stack, understanding what are the numbers that tell us that we are in a good position, provided that they're easy to find, and they're not, because measuring best practice in cybersecurity is one of the hardest things ever. And how do you then go from those numbers into giving the boards enough and sufficient evidence on the fact that, hey, we're doing whatever we can to protect our organization?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I was actually speaking to one of the CISOs in the room last night, and he said his whole job now is numbers, and he recommends any security leader wanting to move into a CISO role should actually get an MBA, because it's a numbers game. So that was fascinating. Thank you so much to Ivano and Tim for diving a little bit into our identity and access management and cyber resilience chapters of the State of Security report. You can download that report right now. It's on the front page of iTnews. Just out the front, we have our iTnews desk, and you can scan it and download the report. if you want to actually come to our breakfast roadshow, we're launching the report on stage in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. The first one is in Brisbane on June 18th. So we're going to have some panels, we have some networking and breakfast. Register and come along. I'd love to see you there. And then, of course, later this year, we have our Security Awards, which is our benchmark security awards for iTnews and Tech Partner News. So I'd love for you guys to all get recognised for your hard work. Apply for the awards. You've got to be in it to win it. And thank you so much for having us. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Ivano. Thanks, VB. As always, as she said, go to the IT News desk if you want to get more depth on the report, if you want to apply for the awards and join the roadshow for the official launch of the report for 2026. Always a highlight here at AusCert.